On Tech News Today, we've got the big Apple news, and we're going to get into the details of the Apple Watch, Apple Pay, and the new iPhones. Plus, we've got some big news from Minecraft fans. Stick around. Tech News Today is next.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Wednesday, September 10th, 2014. This episode is brought to you by Gazelle, the fast and simple way to sell your used gadgets. Find out what your used iPhone, iPad, and other Apple products are worth at Gazelle.com. And by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform that makes it fast and easy to create your own professional website or online portfolio. For a free 2-week trial and 10% off, go to squarespace.com and use the offer code TNT. Tech News Today is a show where we talk about the tech news with the journalists who report it. Welcome to the show. I'm Mike Elgan, and with me is Apple lover Jason Howell. You must have been completely persuaded by yesterday's announcement, and now you're going to abandon Android forever and become an Apple fanboy.
I know. I've been asked already by so many people, so you're going to get an Apple Watch? You're going to get an iPhone 6? I swear every year that's the question. It's not that I wouldn't. I would. But my career is kind of built around Android now, so it wouldn't be very smart of me to do that, to abandon Android at this point. It's kind of what I do.
That hasn't stopped multiple celebrities from pretending.
I suppose so.
It hasn't stopped. Like what was her name? The singer who got a BlackBerry a job at BlackBerry, Alicia Keys. Thank you. Yeah, and then she was tweeting from her iPhone. Then when she got caught, she said, "Oh, I must have been hacked." The classic excuse for that sort of thing. Well, we got a ton of Apple news, of course, so let's jump right into it. The biggest news, of course, is Apple's smallest ever computer called the Apple Watch. Lance Ulanoff is editor-at-large at Mashable, and he joins us now to tell us all about the Apple Watch. Welcome, Lance.
Thanks for having me.
So glad you're here now. What did you think of it? What did you think of the Apple Watch?
I thought it was very good-looking, beautiful device, felt good. There's a lot of, it's funny to even talk in some cases in specifics because there were so many different choices as far as style goes. Materials that it was made of, everything from stainless steel to aluminum to even gold, 18-karat gold. And they've done a lot with the band. So it's really, in some ways, you almost think of it as a watch first. They really thought about how can we make this something that people are like, oh, if I want a really good-looking watch, what would I get? It's also kind of surprising when you look at it. It's all curved. When I wrote my piece, I talked about it has sort of a retro look. Especially people who've been watching Apple for a while now remember the early iPhone. They certainly know what the iPod looks like, and they may have noticed that all of these new products have quite a few curves and not a lot of hard edges. It works especially well when you have a wearable because then nothing rubs against you. You don't have a feeling sharp. It feels good. They've even done smart things with the band. I loved how the band slides in and out of the watch body. For the metal band, it actually just, each link just unclicks. Very smart. And then, there's a lot of cool technology outside, but I have to say one big caveat here. What we were able to interact with yesterday was a canned demo. You really couldn't do much of anything with it, but you got a sense of what it could do. And for example, how that digital crown works. I happen to be somebody who really loves watches. In fact, I collect them. So as soon as you say the word crown on a watch, I know what it is, but I know a lot of people don't realize what that is on a watch, but traditional ones have the crown where you adjust the time. So in a nod to classic fashion, I think, Apple included a crown, but then stuffed a bunch of technology in there. They said infrared sensors and stuff. And if you turn it, it has a smooth gliding feel to it. And it's a critical component for controlling the watch. It's a retina display, so there's a ton on there. And the icons, for example, on the sort of home interface are like all different sizes. And you kind of zoom around on them and you use that crown to kind of move about. But you also use gestures and stuff. I mean, there's a ton to talk about despite the fact that the watch isn't coming out for a long time. We really didn't have much interaction with it beyond this canned demo.
Yeah, and to your point about the retro look, I had the same feeling, and I have a theory about that, which is that I think that Johnny Ive for all of his reputation and his brilliant design sensibility, is really rooted in the 70s. Remember in the 70s when everything futuristic was all rounded and circles and everything was smoothed off? Buildings and room design and furniture and everything was going to be, in the future, was going to be super rounded off. And his design sensibility seems to really gravitate in that direction. Remember the Raspberry computers and, you know, everything that he does that he's really in charge of. And of course, I think the iWatch design is very, very much a product of Johnny Ive.
Apple Watch. Everybody's still saying iWatch.
You know,
It's so true.
In my defense, Tim Cook said it on TV yesterday. He said he called it the iWatch.
It's hard to shake it.
It's going to take me
really?
a couple of years to shake that, because it took us a couple of years to get rid of it.
Apple keeps saying it's our fault that we kind of created that, but you know, we were talking about this yesterday. In reality, is Apple created it because they've used I on so many things. But you know, this is first and foremost supposed to be seen as fashion technology. So you know, they want people to look at all the designs, look at these watches and think, well, which one would be right for me, and then kind of gain the benefit of all this technology. You know, you know, it has sensors on it. It's a real health and fitness device. You know, it can measure your heart rate. It can measure activity. And it's got, you know, 2 different modes. I think there was activity mode and there's exercise mode. Not everybody likes to exercise. I think it's kind of funny. So what is this new fascination with heartbeats? You know, everybody has to know their heartbeats, but Apple is going a step further. Now you can share your heartbeat. They have this thing called digital, I think it's called digital touch. And you can either, instead of responding to someone with words, respond to them with a doodle or your heartbeat. I don't know. You know, I wouldn't respond. You know, like, what do I respond to my boss with my heartbeat? Yeah, I'm alive. I want to let you know that, but I can't let you know whether or not I'm working. Yeah. So it's kind of an interesting idea. You know, they've got other features like Force Touch, which is an interesting name. They've got Taptic inside, which is basically haptics. But I will say, in my experience with the watch, when I wore it, it has this interesting thing where it combines sound and the haptic in such, and the lighting up in such a way, they all come together in such perfect synchronization that it almost enhances the feeling of it. And I've worn smartwatches for a while. I wear a Pebble, and I just love having the sort of haptic sensation, because when I'm doing something else and I need to, I get this little pulse on my hand. I took a glance down. I go, oh, I have a call. They're going to go further and even have, for maps, you'll have a left or right sort of vibration to know which way to turn. So, you know, this is going to be a highly extensible device. You know, people are going to be building a lot of apps for it. But the big question is, will people adopt it in droves? You know, they give you so many design options. There's different sizes, different styles. I mean, it's a lot of choices. Is that the key to breaking through on wearables for the masses?
Yeah, it's a big question. And to me, it's kind of like the opposite of the Moto 360, which is kind of, it's really pretty on the outside, and really, you know, they've made sacrifices by making it round. They made sacrifices of, you know, they sacrificed the benefits of the square. There it is, of the benefits of the square option for them, right? But then Android Wear itself is pretty utilitarian and very straightforward, whereas the Apple Watch, to me, seems pretty utilitarian on the outside and very kind of free-flowing on the inside. The software, the you know, drawing hearts and sending them off, the way the moon zooms into or zooms out to show you the whole solar system and its current formation, all that kind of stuff. So that was really interesting. But the Taptic concept reminds me of what Apple's had for quite a while on the iPhone within the accessibility feature, which is where you can tap out a custom haptic pattern that you can associate with various things. And this is theoretically was for visually disabled people to be able to customize different things based on the haptic sensation. But here they're going to be clearly using the haptics as a way to communicate all kinds of more rich information. So that was really, really interesting. Now, I understand that there isn't any difference inside the watches between the big one and the small one. Is that really true? And what do you make of that, if that is in fact true? Is there just a little bit more empty space in the big one? And if so, what's the point of the big one?
Yeah, well, that's a very good question, you know, because I'm not sure that Apple really broke through in any way on sort of depth of this phone, you know, the thickness of it. It seemed about as thick as most other smartwatches. I have seen the smaller one, and it looks great, and the size looks good, and I don't know, I think that they understand, it's basically about the screen, right? Does somebody, well, I take that back. That somebody wants, and then you put the technology where you'd like it to be. My guess is, this is something I really know, but I'm guessing that what you do with more space is smart is you put up your back. So the large might actually be a small one.
We're having, Lance, I'm sorry, we're having all kinds of problems with our Skype connection. We're going to let you go because the Skype is not cooperating here, and we're only getting a fraction of what you're saying here. Lance Ulanoff is at Lance Ulanoff on Twitter, and you can find him at lanceulanoff.com and also Mashable.com. Thanks again for joining us, Lance Ulanoff.
Bye.
All right, we're going to assume he said goodbye.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was goodbye.
That's right. Goodbye to Skype.
I will say real quick before we move on, I think it's really interesting that we kind of have seen a shift in just approach with Google's approach with Android Wear versus Apple's approach with the Apple Watch, in the sense that Android Wear, Google has really kind of gone to great lengths to say, you know what? The experience is somewhat simple because you don't need to do all these things on your wrist, and we're going to control that process for developers and say this is what you can do with our platform. Whereas it really kind of seems like Apple's kind of gone in the opposite direction, saying, well, this is a smaller computer on your wrist, and you want to do all these things, so we're going to allow developers to kind of open it up and and build all this extra functionality into it. Feels like it's kind of opposite from what we've experienced, where Google has for a while now with Android been so open with, do whatever you want. And now Android Wear is kind of like, no, do these things, and this is what it is, and updates come from us. Meanwhile, Apple's totally kind of shifted in that direction as well. It's kind of like, do whatever you want on the wrist. It's cool.
That's right. Steve Jobs is gone now, and the inmates are in charge of the asylum. And it is really interesting. And I think the most shocking news out of the entire day yesterday was the fact that, there's a spectrum. On the one hand, you could put an enormous device on a wrist, and people have done it, that has all kinds of features and power. And on the other end of the spectrum, you can minimize the features and power and have a very slim and minimalist device. And I was shocked I was expecting the latter, and Apple went with the former. It's a big, bulky, it's an enormously thick watch, and it's very big. It's rounded off, and that's nice, but it's big watch, and they're going for power. They're going for screen resolution. It's got to have a big battery to power that display, because that display looked fantastic, and it was just really kind of shocking to see them go in that direction. I was not expecting that at all. And in fact, of course, the early rumors were that they're going to have a slim band that was more like a fitness band.
Right.
And, that it's absolutely the opposite of that. This is a hardcore, this has got to be the most powerful in some ways, especially the graphics engine, of any smartwatch that we've been talking about over the last,
of course, no one's really used it. We've only seen it in demo mode at this point. But so then the big question is, did Apple do, or do you think Apple will do what they've done so many times in the past, which is legitimize a category for everyone else to kind of profit on? What do you think?
There is no question that is exactly what's going to happen. This completely puts the Apple stamp of approval. I mean, they only have 5 major products or something like that. When Apple enters into a new category like this, it absolutely legitimizes it, although that isn't necessarily true in some categories, so that's not always true. But in this case, I think it's absolutely true that the smartwatch revolution is absolutely here for sure, and it's actually going to happen.
But will the common, just everyday person be cool with dropping another $500 on a watch? That's what I'm wondering. Well, for smartwatch capabilities. Like, I feel like, yes, on one hand, it legitimizes it in the sense that Apple has said this is something we need to pay attention to, and look at all this, time and money we've spent on doing this. At the same time, does that translate into the everyday person finding another $350 to $500 to not only buy this, but also their iPhone that it is required for it to kind of tap into for most of its functions? And I don't know.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, but your point is the legitimization of the category so that other people can, sell a lot more as well.
Sure.
The rising tide phenomenon. And to answer your question, the answer is no. I don't think the average Joe is going to shell out big bucks for this thing.
Right.
I think what's going to happen is it's going to be exactly like the tablet market. Apple massively legitimized the touch tablet market with the iPad, and then years later we're buying super cheap, $129 tablets, and or, you know, everyday people are getting these things. People are running their companies in China on cheap tablets. And so, of course, that category was pretty much non-existent until Apple came along and legitimized it. And I think that's really what's happening here when, you know, I think by this time next year and by the next holiday season, every gift will be a smartwatch of some kind, and everybody will, you know, lots and lots of people are going to be wearing them. And I think we're looking at a new generation, you know, kids who are like 9 years old, 10 years old, 11 years old, or whatever, or young teenagers right now. They will always grow up in a world with wearable computing. It would just be a given that if you're a human being, you'll have a wearable device on your body somewhere at all times. And so it's an interesting thing. It's somewhat inevitable. I don't think Apple was required to legitimize it. I just think that they'll accelerate the inevitable legitimization of smartwatches. Right. And so, yeah, so it's just really about timing more than anything else. So, well, in just a sec, we're going to go on to the next big Apple story, which is Apple Pay. But first, I want to tell you about Gazelle. Gazelle is at GAZELLE.com. I want you to go there right now because they will buy your used device and give you really, really good money for it. And when they do pay you for your device, they're going to pay you by check, PayPal, or they'll even give you 5% more than they promised if you choose the Amazon gift card option. And, of course, most of us are going to buy stuff on Amazon anyway. You might as well get some free money from Gazelle for your old device. And it's really super, you know, the best thing I think about Gazelle, there are lots of things you can do with your phone. You could try to sell it on your own. That's a huge hassle. You could do all kinds of things with it, but Gazelle is by far the easiest way to do it. You simply go to the site, choose your device to indicate the condition, and they give you a price. Then they send you a box. You put the device in the box. They already have a prepaid sticker. You put the sticker on the box, and off it goes. There's really nothing to it. So there's really no reason for you to leave those devices lying around at your house, gathering dust and losing value. Gazelle's paid nearly $170 million to over 1 million customers for over the years, and shipping is free. Most items qualify for a free box, and there are no listing hassles at all. It's super easy to do. So find out what your iPhone is worth. Take a minute and go to Gazelle.com to find out. Well, as expected, Apple rolled out a new payment system called Apple Pay. Jake Davidson writes for Money, and Elizabeth Dexheimer is a reporter from Bloomberg News, and they both join us now. Welcome to you both.
Hi, Mike. Thanks so much for having me.
Now, Jake, what is Apple Pay exactly?
So Apple Pay is Apple's new payment platform, and it seems like what you'll do is you'll sort of take a picture of your credit card or load it onto the device in another way through Passbook, and then you'll go to the store, you'll wave it in front of an NFC transmitter that they'll have there, and then you'll have paid for your goods and you can just leave.
Now, Elizabeth, you cover finance and the banking industry and so on. How does Apple Pay, do you think, affect the payments industry? How does this event change everything in that industry?
Well, when you think about the payments industry, the fee structure and kind of who pays for what is very complex. And some of the details that have emerged, you know, since this was announced, is that Apple is really introducing a new fee to the structure that's in place now. That banks are going to be, or Apple will be getting a fee from banks that issue credit and debit cards for every transaction that you make with the new iPhone.
Now, Elizabeth, you wrote about the inevitable fee that Apple will skim off of each transaction. What do we know about that? We don't know how much it is, right? And what do we know about it?
Well, just like with really any sort of agreement, it really is, you know, between, you know, and it will be different between each, you know, issuer and Apple. And, you know, I think, again, you know, kind of what this kind of the bigger picture here is that it is, you know, it's an additional fee. It's added on to what is already a very lucrative industry. I mean, to give you some kind of sense, you know, they expect their numbers out there, it could reach as much as $90 billion by 2017. So this is just a very fast-growing piece of the payments industry, and Apple is certainly going to be getting a piece of that.
Now, Jake, is Apple Pay U.S. or international? What's the scope of this thing?
So Apple Pay is U.S., and it's not a whole lot of the U.S. in that. It's only about 2.4% of retailers, about 220,000 stores. So they've gotten a lot of the big guys on board with McDonald's and Walgreens, but most stores in the U.S. still won't accept it, at least out of the gate.
Interesting. Now, what do you think, Jake, that this is going to do for Apple's revenue? Will this become a significant percentage of their income anytime soon?
So I think we don't know too much about the payment structure yet, but at least based on previous companies like Square, this isn't a great business to get into for profit. And now Apple has such a large scale that might not be true, but you end up taking such a small percentage because the credit card companies are going to take 2%, and merchants don't want to pay much more than that. So you're going to get a fraction of a percent off every sale. That's not a huge revenue stream, and Square's learned that the hard way, and they've lost quite a lot of money trying to make a profit off this business.
Now, Elizabeth, Apple brags that they have 800 million credit cards on file, and that's one of the reasons why they're a hefty superpower in the world of online payments, theoretically. They also introduced a new feature where you take a picture of your credit card, you can add more credit cards. Do those additional credit cards count in the same way as Apple's currently existing credit cards? I mean, right now, I have a credit card on file at Apple for iTunes, right? So I went there and I entered in the number and I entered in the secret 3-digit code, my name, and the expiration date and all that stuff. So they definitely have my credit card information. If I take a picture of another card using Apple Pay, do they have access to that information to the same degree that they have the other credit card that I previously entered?
No, they will not be the data. They will not be have access to as part of the new security feature that's part of the new iPhone. Apple will not be accessing the consumer data.
Now, Jake, you know, in the wake of the iCloud hacking scandal, I think a lot of people are wondering whether they can trust Apple with their financial data. What do you think? Can we trust Apple?
Well, I don't know.
Well,
I'm going to start with Jacob, and then we're going to go to you, Elizabeth, afterwards.
I think, trusting Apple, any company can theoretically be hacked, as we're learning. JP Morgan was hacked the other day by Russians. It's, anything is possible. But this technology is safer than what we're doing right now, and there's no question about that. The technology basically creates a single-use credit card number that goes through, and it's a lot safer than storing your actual credit card number. And the person on the other end, or the person swiping the card, never actually sees your card or card number. So it's also safer in that way.
Elizabeth, do you have a view on that? Can we trust Apple, or do we need to?
Well, I don't have a view so much, but I will just point out that that the security feature of using a token that digitally scrambles the consumer data, the credit card information, that is something that the card companies, American Express, Visa, and MasterCard, they introduced standards for this system previously, and will be potentially rolling it out with with other products as well. So
Jacob?
it's not just unique to Apple.
Gotcha. Jacob Davidson writes at money.com, and you can follow him on Twitter at Jake D. Thank you so much for joining us, Jacob Davidson.
Thanks a lot.
All right, and Elizabeth Dexheimer is at Bloomberg.com, and you can follow her on Twitter at @edexheimer. And thank you for coming on Tech News Today, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, Apple also rolled out new iPhones. Rene Ritchie publishes iMore.com, of course, and he's a host of Twit's Mac Break Weekly and joins us by phone. Welcome, Rene.
Hi, Mike. How are you?
I'm doing great, thanks. Now, your report that we had you on the live cam for our special coverage on Mac Break Weekly yesterday was awesome, and thank you for that. You brought a lot of insight to that show. Now, what's the best? What do you think, now that the dust is settled, what do you think the best or most surprising thing Apple announced about the new iPhones is?
I don't think it's surprise. I mean, you and I have been covering this for so long, and Apple's got, as much as they are unpredictable, they tend to follow patterns, and it's usually obvious what they're going to do from hindsight. We'd heard about the bigger screens for a while. We'd heard, they put the gestures in for back and for other things, so it made sense that they'd go around. I think just the speed in which they can do things, they can go from telling you that, you want a small phone because of your thumb to you no longer need to worry about your thumb. We're making big phones. That sort of agility for a big company like that, I think, is always interesting.
Yeah. Now, what happened to Sapphire? Now, I'm still not 100% believing that one or two of these phones don't have Sapphire screens, simply because they talked about some ion technology for strengthening glass, and they referred to it as glass. Now, I've only heard about this ion process for Sapphire. I hadn't heard about it for ordinary glass. Can you confirm once and for all that this is not Sapphire? And if it isn't Sapphire, what happened to Sapphire? I thought they built a big plant and everything.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the ion cannon thing was such big news because it was sapphire, and unfortunately, I can't confirm that there's no sapphire on it, but I think if there was, Apple would use it in the marketing because it's a term like HD, it's a term like 64-bit. Regardless if people really understand it, it makes it look like it's something that you have that your competition doesn't. So I'd imagine if Apple had a sapphire story, we would have seen it. The only thing I can imagine is that they're still having trouble making those sorts of panels. You know, they want to put everything they can into what they know they can absolutely put out now, which is why I think maybe we didn't get as big a resolution or we didn't get 3x on both phones. Apple is keeping it conservative enough that they can get the phones, because they're making tens of millions of each of these into everybody's hands by launch day.
So is it fair to say that it's possible that they expected to be able to do this and at some point in recent weeks or months basically came to the conclusion that, yeah, it's not going to happen, we're not going to be able to do this at scale?
Yeah, I think that's always the thing. Like, I think Apple typically, they have several prototypes for every phone. They always have something that's incredibly ambitious, and they have something that's more conservative. And they basically sprint to the finish line every year. And whatever they can get done by the time they have to ship, they get done. Anything that's not up to their standards, which are, you know, sometimes lunatic, sometimes okay, they just push off into the next release cycle.
Now, Apple's been obsessed by its, or I guess the way to say it is they've always defended this small size of their phone by saying, hey, this is for one-handed operation. You can reach your thumb. The ordinary person can reach their thumb all the way to the top on the other side. And so now that they've come out with these bigger phones, they've got some solutions for dealing with the fact that the screens are so large, one of which is a method of a double tap method for bringing down the top of the screen within reach. Another one is for the iPhone 6 Plus, where you turn it sideways and you get a special iPad mode. What do you think of those solutions? Are those kind of hacky solutions, or are those fairly elegant solutions to the problem?
Well, so originally, in Apple's defense, most people weren't buying big phones for a long time. A lot of us geeks talked about them, we saw them, we liked them, but when you look at the numbers, Apple was still selling as many small iPhones as almost every big phone combined, and especially the phablet size in China and areas like that, it's incredibly popular. But in North America, it hasn't gotten much traction. So Apple, just like they waited a long time to go to Verizon, they basically got every dollar they could out of AT&T first, then went to Verizon. They waited as long as they could with small phones, got almost everybody who was willing to have a small phone to buy it, and now they're adding the next easiest market, the next addressable market to that segment. And we've seen technology, software overcome hardware before. BlackBerry did it with BlackBerry 10. They introduced gestures. They were abstract gestures, so they weren't as intuitive, but they were playing around with that. And the larger phones, you know, Google, Samsung, they've done a lot of interesting things there. And Apple started building on that a couple of years ago with iOS 7. And at least in my quick tests, things like double tapping, because Touch ID is capacitive, it's a sensor, it's not just a button. You don't have to just click it. You can just touch it, and you double touch it, and it brings the entire interface down to make it easier to reach. And it looks really goofy. It looks like a bad hack. But after a couple minutes, it just feels instinctive, and you can't believe you're doing it, but it works well if you keep doing it.
Now, I think a lot of people are wondering which one they should buy. Of course, the big one is bigger, which is nice, and it's also more expensive, which is not so nice. Can you help people by understanding the main differences between the iPhone 6 and the iPhone 6 Plus?
Sure. So I got a chance to spend maybe 20, 30 minutes with both of them. So I tried them out as much as they would let me before they kicked me out. And the 4.7-inch iPhone doesn't feel that much bigger. It's so light, and the rounded edges really keep it feeling like an iPhone. It doesn't feel like anything different. The 5.5-inch phone does feel different. It does feel like a big phone, and there might be a concern for some people. But the advantage, like you said, is it's essentially an iPhone in portrait mode, and then when you turn it to landscape, it becomes a tiny iPad. It gives you the two-column iPad interface. And for anybody who really likes productivity, that's going to be important, because you get 2 columns of mail or 2 columns of notes or 2 columns of whatever apps you tend to use on an iPad. It's almost like having the best of both devices. You get ultra mobility, but a lot of productivity. And you also get optical image stabilization on the camera, which means if you take low light photography, anyone who's used one of the Nokia cameras with OIS will tell you, you just get fantastic. You can leave the aperture open for a long time. You get really good exposures on all your pictures. Little things like they have display mode, so they have zoom display, which is a feature that lets you, for example, some people want more pixels. Young people, they have great eyesight. They just want to get more of everything on the screen. As you get older, like me, you start to want to be able to see things better. So you can actually put the phones into a mode that scales up the original iPhone display. So everything's just easier to read. So they're really serving a lot of different sort of audiences, and even accessibility. They're improving that here too.
It's very difficult for any company to predict exactly which of their devices are going to sell better than others. I think that Apple was surprised by the fact that the iPhone 5S sold really well and the iPhone 5C sold probably less well than they expected. And I have the feeling that the same thing is going to happen here. I think they're going to sell a lot of 6 Pluses and probably not so many 6S, just 6s. What do you think about that? Do you think the 6 Plus is going to be the runaway hit here?
You know, it's so interesting because there's so many factors here. Apple planned the 5S to be like a blockbuster movie, like every iPhone. Big spike on launch, then it goes down until the next year's launch. But the 5C was meant to be like a TV series where it would just sit on the shelves week after week, and over time it would sell a lot of units. And it did. For anyone but Apple, it didn't do badly. It was still one of the best-selling phones, top 10 phones, top 5 phones off, and sometimes even top 3. What was interesting last year is everyone said, oh, Apple's making gold. That's gross. And then on launch day, oh, my God, I can't get a gold iPhone. People panicked, and suddenly everybody wanted it. Now we've heard people go, I don't want a big phone. Apple's making big phones. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure on launch day, if it's harder to get the iPhone 6 Plus, we're going to hear about nothing but. Yep. Again, the large phablet-sized phones haven't sold in North America in any large numbers, so it'll be interesting to see if Apple doing one will change that. But I think you're right. I think there will be a lot more people attracted to a bigger phone than there has been before.
Rene Ritchie writes at imar.com, and you can follow him on Twitter at Rene Ritchie. Thanks for joining us, Rene, and you can find Rene, of course, on Mac Break Weekly here on the Twit Network every week. Thanks again, Rene Ritchie.
Thanks so much, Mike.
All right. Well, a couple of quick other Apple news stories. Apple also announced new iCloud storage pricing to come in line more or less with Google pricing. 5 gigs are free, 99 cents a month for 20 gigs, $3.99 a month for 200, $9.99 a month for 500 gigs, and $19.99 a month for 1 terabyte. Apple also made another change yesterday. They removed the iPod Classic from its website. Remember that? It looked like a pack of cigarettes. It was a big, fat music player with a 160 gigabyte spinning hard drive and 30-pin connector. So good riddance to the original.
Pour one out for the iPod Classic.
Yeah, it hung in there. It really did. It was introduced roughly in 2001.
We all had one.
We all had one, and those things were heavy.
Yeah,
you know?
They were. Yeah. Actually, our iPod from that generation has become my daughter's play phone.
Has it really? Like she pretends like Steve Jobs is calling.
She finds it and she thinks it's a phone.
That's cool. That's cute. At least they're getting some use out of it.
Yes, exactly.
And now it's a collector's item because you can't buy them anymore. They are gone for good. Well, in just a sec, we're going to tell you about a new acquisition, potentially, by Microsoft. But first, I want to tell you about Squarespace. Squarespace is the awesome place to build a website, and I've been using it for a long, long time. And I absolutely love Squarespace because they make me look like a super genius. They make me look like I know what I'm doing when it comes to design, which I don't. But my sites that I build look beautiful because Squarespace has 25 beautiful templates that you start with, and then you can modify and customize and add to and subtract from and do whatever you want to. But ultimately, that beautiful design is still there. They also make me look like a genius in terms of running a website because it never goes down. It's always high performance. It always looks beautiful on a mobile device. And of course, I have nothing to do with that either other than the fact that I signed up and used Squarespace because they take care of all that stuff, which is really, really fantastic. And of course, Squarespace Metric app for iPhone and iPad lets you monitor and check site stats like page views, unique visitors, social media follows, and all that kind of stuff. It's very important, and we all like to use mobile devices. We don't like to be chained to a desk. So this is a great way to manage your site with a mobile device. And also, their blog app lets you do similar things and manage your blog on the go as well. And like I said, if somebody's looking at your site with a phone or a tablet, it's going to look native and beautiful on that device because Squarespace is really good at creating that unique, customized view for no matter what kind of device people are looking at it with. So it starts at just $8 a month, and that includes a free domain name if you sign up for a year. And of course, Squarespace hosting is the best in the business. So here's what you do. Start a free 2-week trial now with no credit card required and start building your website. And when you decide to sign up for Squarespace, just use the offer code TNT and that'll get you 10% off. And we thank Squarespace for their support of Tech News Today. Well, Microsoft is reportedly close to acquiring Mojang, the maker of Minecraft, for more than $2 billion. The Wall Street Journal reported that the deal could come as early as this week. Unlike many potential game acquisitions, Minecraft is already raking in the dough. the game brought in $360 million last year, according to the Journal. Shira Ovide is a tech reporter for the Wall Street Journal and joins us now. Welcome, Shira.
Thanks very much.
Did I munge your last name? Is that how we pronounce your last name?
Ovide, yeah, you got it.
Ovide. Well, that was pretty close. I didn't quite get it, but anyway, it's good to know. So why would Microsoft want to buy a low-res open-world game?
Well, it's a fair question, and that's one that we're still puzzling through a little bit. You have to remember, of course, that Microsoft has a pretty rich video game heritage. Those of us who are old enough to remember the old flight simulator games from back in the early innings of Windows will have some fond memories of that. And of course, Microsoft now has this very large and healthy franchise in Xbox console gaming, and this may be a way to kind of unite those two heritage products of Microsoft, both PC gaming and video game console gaming.
One of the odd things about Mojang and is that they monetize their game the old-fashioned way. They charge people for it.
Right.
I mean, is that something?
Exactly it.
Is that something that Microsoft will find attractive? Because that's the old Microsoft model too that they've been trying to cling to for years.
Yeah, I mean, the monetization model is sort of very clear with Minecraft and related games in a way that it isn't maybe for free-to-play games, right? That, as you said, you pay $7 to $30 to buy a copy of Minecraft. And again, if you're Microsoft, you have a heritage of being able to sell software, and they have a billion plus Windows PCs out in the world and 80 million or so Xbox consoles, and you can start doing the math if you start expanding the number of Windows PC users or the number of Xbox console users who download and purchase a Minecraft game. You're starting to talk big money there.
Now, of course, the Minecraft community is super fanatical about the game. How do you suppose they're going to like buying their passion from Microsoft? Is this going to be a problem for them, or will they just not care?
I think it's going to be a problem for them. The point you made is exactly right, that Minecraft has built this very kind of loyal audience. A lot of them are people who really relish the sort of independent cred of Minecraft and the Minecraft founders. And you're starting to see already this morning on places like Reddit and Twitter and other places where Minecraft fans are gathering, they're in a little bit of a state of disbelief that Minecraft's founders, who have long said, we don't take outside money, we have no plans to sell, big corporations are evil, there's a little bit of disbelief that the founders would now sell out to a company the size of Microsoft. And
what are your sources telling you about what happens post-acquisition, assuming this goes through? Are they going to keep it independent? What's going to happen to the founder? What do we know about all that?
Yeah, I think that's still a little bit unclear to us, at least. It is worth remembering that probably the most famous independent game developer Microsoft purchased previously was Bungie, which was the company that made Halo, the very popular video game Halo. And that deal, more than 10 years ago, Microsoft, the company was based then in Chicago. Microsoft brought them to their headquarters in Redmond. It was a little bit of an uncomfortable marriage for an independent game developer inside a company the size of Microsoft. And about 5-6 years ago, Microsoft spun off Bungie. It's an independent company working on its own games, and Microsoft is still pursuing Halo franchises and making quite a nice bit of money from selling Halo games.
And I imagine we could expect to see post-acquisition a version of Minecraft for the Windows Phone platform. And I hope if this acquisition does go through, I hope it happens before tomorrow at 7 p.m. Pacific, because that's when OMG Craft is on, a Twitch show about Minecraft with Chad, of course. And so he can comment on that if the acquisition goes through before that time tomorrow. Shira Ovide is at WSJ.com, and you can follow her on Twitter at Shira Ovide. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks again.
Well, in a quick follow-up, we've been following the saga of the changing of fortunes in the messaging world and the addition of features in the messaging world, which increasingly includes phone calls. And now we're learning that, in fact, Google Voice has once and for all been rolled into and integrated with Google Hangouts.
Phew, finally.
So, yeah.
And not only that, I didn't know about this. When I saw this news last night, I was like, okay, great, it's in there, but I want to make my VoIP calls through there. Check this out, Hangouts Dialer, a new app that allows you to make VoIP calls from Hangouts. Fantastic. So there you go. So, you know, it looks like it's all coming up roses finally.
I hope so, and I hope Google can figure out how to prevent people from Bangladesh from calling me at 3 o'clock in the morning. That would be cool, because Hangouts has always been kind of confusing about who can call you and how do you block them and how do you, just make yourself available to certain people. It's not the most elegant experience, but if they can pull it all together, and now that they've integrated Google Voice, I think it could be a really dominant service. But they've got to go after those fine points. Otherwise, they're not really going to be a contender.
Finally, with Hangouts VoIP calling on my device, I don't mind having the $30 T-Mobile plan, because it turns out 100 minutes, like you get that plan and you're like, oh, 100 minutes, I hardly ever talk on the phone. That's not a big deal. Right. So many months I run into that, so this is going to help. I'm really happy about this news today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, our TNT fan of the day is Adam Binslev in Denmark, who posted this picture on Twitter and Instagram. His screen is our live coverage yesterday of the Apple announcement, and a bottle, for some reason, of Pabst Blue Ribbon. Did you know that they drink Pabst Blue Ribbon in Denmark?
Something's rotten in Denmark. No, not really. Actually, I don't mind Pabst Blue Ribbon. I realize it's a hipster beer, but I don't mind it.
We have to have a conversation, Jason. And
hey, it's water beer. What do it's. I don't expect much more of it than I'm kind of thirsty right now. I don't need like an actual beer. I'll drink this instead of water.
All right. Well, 2 votes for Pabst and 1 against. I guess I lose again on that count. Well, how do you watch or listen to TNT? Just take a picture of your setup and post it on Google+, Twitter, or Facebook, or Instagram, and use the hashtag HowDoYouWatchTNT, and we will find it. You can also search the hashtag HowDoYouWatchTNT and see them all for yourself. Right now, there's far too many for us to ever put on the air, so you can check those out. A lot of them are really fun. And that is the Tech News Today. You can subscribe to Tech News Today on Stitcher, iTunes, YouTube, Feedly, Yahoo, RSS, so many options. You can choose your favorite at twit.tv/TNT. And send us your thoughts and opinions. We want to hear from you. Just comment on Twitter or Google+ using the hashtag TechNewsToday. You can send email to tnt@twit.tv or call us at 260-TNT-SHOW and leave a message. We might play it on the air. Don't miss our evening newscast, Tech News Tonight, at 4 p.m. Pacific tonight and every weeknight right here on the Twit Network. My name's Mike Elgan. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.